2nd Ezra, chapter 8, verse 50. For many great miseries shall be done to them that in the latter time shall dwell in the world, because they have walked in great pride. In the news, from the RT, top U.S. general warns of conflict between great powers. Global debt about to explode. Report. Fuel poverty to hit British households. Energy chief warns. General Mark Milley, chair of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, named China and Russia as the global powers America is vying against. The likelihood of a military conflict between great powers is growing, the chair of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, has warned. Speaking in front of cadets graduating from U.S. Military Academy West Point on Saturday, Milley said that the world you are being commissioned into has the potential for a significant international conflict between great powers. The general added, that potential is increasing, not decreasing. Milley went on to single out China and Russia, describing both as having significant military capabilities and intending to change the current rules-based order. He also noted that the ongoing fight in Ukraine highlighted some of the main characteristics of future battlefields, which will be highly complex and almost certainly decisive in urban areas against exclusive, ambiguous enemies that combine terrorism and warfare along conventional capabilities, all embedded within large civilian populations. Moreover, Milley predicted a radical shift in military technology in the coming decades, akin to the replacement of the musket by the rifle, and the rifle with the machine gun. Among the hardware dominating the future battlefield are robotic tanks and ships and airplanes, according to the general. He also noted that the technological edge is no longer necessary in America's favor. What was once the exclusive province of the United States military is now available to most nation states with the money to acquire them, Milley warned. He also pointed out the development of artificial intelligence meant that whatever overmatch we, the United States, enjoyed militarily for the last 70 years is closing quickly, with Washington already being challenged in every domain of warfare in space and cyber, maritime, air, and, of course, land. Milley called on the U.S. military to be adaptive and resilient while maintaining incredible character under the intense pressure of ground combat. This article goes on further. However, for the sake of time, let's visit the next article. Global debt about to explode. The tally soared to a record $305 trillion in the first quarter of this year, driven by the U.S. and China, a researcher says. The world's two largest economies were the heaviest borrowers in the first 3 months of this year as global debt climbed to above $305 trillion, the IMF reported on Wednesday. Its data showed that China's debt increased by $2.5 trillion over the first quarter, and the United States added $1.5 trillion. Total debt in the Eurozone declined for a third consecutive quarter, the IMF said. According to the analysis, many countries, both emerging and developed, are entering a monetary tightening cycle with high levels of dollar-dominated debt. In other words, these countries that utilize the US dollar, which is known as the leading global reserve currency, will suffer when it loses its value due to hyperinflation. When they begin to leave off from using the US dollar, as some countries have already been doing. As central banks move ahead with policy tightening to curb inflationary pressure, see, higher borrowing costs with exacerbate debt vulnerabilities. I can't really pronounce that word, you know, accent. The IMF report said the impact could be more severe for those emerging market borrowers that have a less diversified investor base, it added. Corporate debt outside of banks and government borrowing were the largest sources of the increase in borrowing. Debt, excluding the financial sector, surged above 236 trillion, some 40 trillion higher than 2 years ago when the pandemic hit. Government debt has risen more slowly in the same period, and government financing needs, still running well above the pre-pandemic levels. Higher and more volatile commodity prices could force some countries to increase public spending even further to ward off social unrest, which will only contribute to more inflation than hyperinflation, said the report, noting that this might be particularly difficult for emerging markets that have less physical space. The IMF also said that growth is expected to slow significantly this year, which would have adverse implications for debt dynamics. On the back of strict lockdowns in China and tighter global funding conditions, the anticipated slowdown will likely limit or even reverse the downward trend in debt ratios, it explained. This concludes this article. And for the final article, fuel poverty to hit British households, energy chief warns. The CEO of the world's biggest electric utility service provider says London should step in to help Britons. Around 40% of British families will live in fuel poverty if the country's authorities don't take steps to lower energy prices, according to the head of the energy company E.ON, Michael Lewis, as quoted by The Independent. Some people are at the edge, and that will get worse, Lewis said, adding that 1/3 of E.ON's customers were slashing spending on food. The top official called for the broadest shoulders to bear the burden, providing no details on the specific steps the government should take. The most important thing is that the government intervenes. It is up to the government to decide how they fund that, he said. The annual energy price cap is expected to rise as high as £3,000, which is $3,748 equivalent, as early as autumn, in comparison with the £1,277, which is equivalent to $1,595. That families are paying before April, according to Lewis, who said increasing universal credit payments would help people on the lowest incomes most affected by the crisis. An Ipsos UK poll published by Sky News earlier this week revealed that 65% of Britons have refrained from turning on their heat in an effort to save money, and that 1 in 4 have even skipped meals. And a famine is coming. On Friday, the Bank of England admitted it's unable to control inflation, which surged to a 40-year high in April. The regulator's chief economist said inflation is expected to rise to 10.25% in the fourth quarter of the current year, hitting another record. Millions of households across the UK are facing the impact of an unprecedented rise in energy costs. The 54% increase in the energy price cap reportedly means a family using a typical amount of gas and electricity will now pay approximately $2,462 a year. This concludes the article. G7 warns of inflation danger. Another bad headline: global food catastrophe imminent. And Lord's willing, I'll leave all these articles in the description box of the lesson. Now, let's get to the scriptures. Again, this is the book of 2 Ezra, chapter 8, verse 50. For many great misery shall be done to them that walk, that in the latter time shall dwell in the world because they have walked in great pride. So I'd like to give all praises, blessings, glories, and honors be unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Racha Kudash, and double honors to my elder apostles and bishop elders of Great Millstone who have taught me this truth, as well as men of like mind. Shalom wa chasad, which means peace and mercy to the elect of the nation of Israel. Home you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and Israelite foreigners of the seed of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whom is scattered here in America, which is Babylon the Great, and abroad. To you I say Shalom and Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai Ratazah. This lesson is edifying. Again, Lord's willing, I'll leave the link to the other articles in the description box of the lesson, because a lot has been going on, man, in the news. And the reason why all these things are happening is because Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai are getting ready to judge 2/3 of the nation of Israel. I'll just read a few scriptures and conclude the lesson. This is 2nd Ezra chapter 8, verse 50. For many great miseries shall be done to them that in the latter time shall dwell in the world, because they have walked in great pride. Right, so because people have walked in great pride, and many great miseries in the form of famine, financial collapses, death, plagues, destruction, shall be done to them, because they have walked in great pride. Okay. Verse 56, for when they had taken liberty, they despised the Most High Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. So now that they have the liberty to repent unto Yahweh through his son Yahushai, they despise that liberty. Why? Because they have walked in great pride and true scorn of his law. So when they had taken liberty, they despised the Most High Yahweh through scorn of his what? Of his law, and forsook his ways. Moreover, they have trodden down his righteous, who are his righteous, his prophets, the elect, and said in their heart that there is no power. And the book of Psalms, the 14th chapter, says that the fool had said in his heart that there is no God. Yea, and that knowing they must die, right? So they are going to die for walking in great pride in these latter days. And that is why many great miseries shall come upon them, because they will die by reason of these many great miseries that shall come upon them, that the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai are going to send upon them. 2nd Ezra chapter 7, verse 20, for there be many that perish in this life, because they despise the law of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai that is set before them. So many will die because they despise the law of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, and they despise the law of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai through scorn. For Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai had given straight commandment to such as came, what they should do to live, even as they came, and what they should do, and what they should observe to avoid punishment. And nevertheless, they were not obedient unto him, unto Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, okay, through his prophets, through his words, but spake against him, and imagined vain things, worshiping idols, and deceived themselves by their wicked deeds, and said of the Most High Yahweh that he is not. How foolish of them to make such statements. But that's because of their great pride in which they walk in. That's why they're going to suffer and die by reason of many great miseries that the Lord is going to send upon them, upon this earth, in the form of famine, plagues, pestilences, shortages, inflation that's going to affect gas prices, okay, no light, all these different things, man. And knew not his ways, but his law they have despised, and denied his covenants, and his statutes have they not been faithful, and have not performed his works. So they're going to die by reason of all these different things. So with that, I'll conclude this lesson. Lord willing, it was edifying, informative, and I'll leave all the links to the news articles in the description box of the lesson. With that, I say shalom to the elect.